In the most divisive of times, the great debates rage on. Who was the best Batman? Was the book truly better than the movie? Did Han shoot first? Nerds with Opinions will seek to answer life's greatest questions. Hello there, fellow nerds. You are listening to Nerds with Opinions, episode number 140. As always, I'm your host, Matt Holman. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by returning guest, Cynthia Borges, and we are talking about AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling's co-branded event, Forbidden Door. We're reviewing it in depth. We're talking wrestling today here on Nerds with Opinions. So I am back with returning guest many times over, Cynthia Borges. How are you doing? So this last weekend, I guess we watched it on Monday, but a day later than when it aired, we watched AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling's Forbidden Door pay-per-view. We watched it together, and so we're like, hey, let's review this thing on the podcast. For people listening, we are not going to talk about anything on the pre-show because since it was a day later and this was already a really long pay-per-view, we both decided to skip the pre-show. So we're going to skip over those matches. And that's, I was actually looking, funny enough, this is just absurd. I mean, I don't know. I'm all for giving more people a shot, but so they had 5 pre-show matches.
Oh my God.
We watched 10 matches, which is absurd, but yeah, so probably a good thing we skipped it. So we're not going to talk about the pre-show matches. I'm sure they were great though. So right off the bat, let's just start with the opening match of the main card. And I'm trying to remember how you pronounce this guy's name. Gosh dang it. They said it so many times that I can't remember. I think it's Hechicero. I think that sounds right. MJF defeated Hechicero by pinfall in a singles match. Hechicero is a CMLL luchador. I mean, the first I'd heard of him was when they announced this match. And MJF defeated him in the opening match. It was MJF's hometown. Now, since Dynamite this week, MJF's last appearance as a babyface, apparently. What do you think about this match?
I thought it was freaking awesome. Like we talked about, I love the fact that MJF actually wrestles now. I mean, he has for a while, but there was a really long time where he just talked, which he's phenomenal at that. But
that might change though now that he's a heel again, because I think that's part of his gimmick.
Yeah. But then I also can't pronounce his name. His opponent
Hechicero, and I'm guessing that's phonetically how it looks like. I looked on his actual Wikipedia page to see if there was a phonetic how you pronounce this, and there's not. So I'm just gonna just assume it's Hechicero. But
yeah, he was amazing as well, and it was the first time I've seen him wrestle, and it was awesome. I would definitely look forward to more matches with him.
I was really impressed too. You never know what you're going to get, especially with a match with people that haven't worked together before. And there's, I don't, maybe Hechicero's bilingual, but I think we can, maybe assume that possibly not. And so sometimes those, the chemistry is not really there. And this was absolutely not the case. And he impressed the heck out of me. And it was a good opportunity for MJF to work a traditional kind of old school wrestling match. But it was kind of a mix of styles, because obviously Hechicero has the more luchador style. But yeah, he was super entertaining. My only thought on this is looking at this card. It's interesting that they had one CMLL person in this, but then used the same show to then promote that they're doing this big co-branded beginning of next year, kind of around Wrestle Kingdom time, and New Japan's doing AEW, New Japan, CMLL. I think, did they say AAA too? The other
Maybe
Mexican.
I know Stardom was also in there.
Yeah, but huge cross-branded thing that we don't know a ton about yet, other than it was announced. It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
But if that was kind of like, hey, we're going to use this opportunity to do this co-branded show. I love that they had one CMLL match, but this was definitely like branded as a New Japan AEW thing, and it's kind of like, well, maybe we could have used. You know what? I take that back. I am so sorry. There was one more match, because that was the Stephanie Valcour and Mercedes Moné match. I take that back. Oh no, though. So she was from CMLL, but then she was the New Japan
she
Strong
had like
champion.
3 belts.
So kind of both. All right. I take that back.
So I wonder if
they kind of do their
to introduce everyone else into the join us.
Yeah. So they kind of did their due diligence. So I walk that back. Short match in the grand scheme of things compared to the other ones. 9 minutes and 50 seconds, but great opener. Really great opener. Oh, yeah. What would you rate it out of 5 stars?
Ooh. Probably 4.
I'm going to go 4.5. I'm going to go 4.5.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really, really solid. The only reason I can't give it more is because I do think that there are some matches later in the card that surpassed it.
Yeah.
In the next match, the Elite defeated the Acclaimed with Hiroshi Tanahashi in a trios match. What'd you think about this one?
It was like, I love the Young Bucks wrestling. Their gimmick, not so much. We talked about this at length, but like them in the ring is just, it makes me happy. And then you've got Okada in there as well. Like, you've got so many good wrestlers in this match. And I loved it. I did. I did not want to scissor you, but I loved the match.
So as an aside, you mentioned that we both agreed we didn't really care for the Young Bucks' current gimmick. So we had a conversation about that. I don't know. It's just not really landing for me. It's not. To me, I describe it to you as it's annoying, but I don't feel like it's getting heat. I don't hate them. I'm just like, ugh. Like, and so to me, it's not completely successful. I just find them kind of cringy. I really, strangely, when we talked about this as well, Okada's heel take, I really dig. And so if anything,
I think it's because his is not as over the top, though. It's like, I don't know. I think it's more subtle, but I think it hits harder.
I can agree with that. Yeah, and it might be just because obviously he's a little limited in like English promos, but then it's even like his presentation's different. Like the Bucks are doing like a really over the top thing with like they're wrestling in the vests and just like their look, I don't know, their promos. It's it feels a little
try hard.
Well, I was going to say it feels a little like cheesy 80s wrestling, like territories wrestling. Like it's obviously they're doing modern stuff, but in terms of like, oh, we're just going to be really over the top heels. And I don't know. I find it a little cheesy for this modern era. It's hard to be like, hey, there's some of the best, heels in the game, in comparison to, like some of the stuff like The Rock did just recently for WrestleMania. Like that's true heel energy, you know? Yeah. And so I think in 2024, it kind of comes off as a little silly. And it's okay there could be silly heels, but they're not, I don't know. It's just not landing for me. Cause like, I think like a silly cowardly heel, somebody who's like really good at that is like a Grayson Waller or like a Miz. And
I love Grayson Waller.
I don't know. This just isn't. I'm not connecting with it. And these guys can do heel for sure. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, like we discussed, like their heel run with the whole Hangman storyline that was like a beautiful slow burn. so good. But like, yeah, there's just something there's a disconnect between this heel run that they have and me and
Yeah.
you. It just it's not hitting right, which is fine because let's be real, they'll do something else and hopefully like we've talked about with Chris Jericho, he reinvents himself and like he's not
Continue.
afraid to do stuff and it's cool to see like the Young Bucks not afraid to change their characters as well.
Yeah.
You just can't bat 100 every time.
100%.
Or 1,000.
I if you bat 100, actually, that's bad. By the way,
Oh, 1,000. Yeah, I was
1,000.
like
Yeah.
100. Right.
Not to man baseball explain to you, but I was like,
No, no, I don't really know what it means. I just know it's a phrase. And then I sat as soon as I like
you were on the right
said it, I'm
track.
just like, I feel like that was wrong.
You were on the right track. I think you were crossing like you were mixing up batting 1,000 and like 100%. I'm guessing.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
So, question before we rate this. So I know that the Elite are all champions, and then the fourth member became a champion. We'll talk about that a little later. And so I don't know if like they're trying to, they want them looking strong. But do you think that the right team won? Do you think that they needed to go over on the Acclaimed and Tanahashi?
Like, I feel like that's a hard question to answer because like both teams, like the Acclaim are like seriously over. Like they don't necessarily need a belt if you're looking to like push someone, but at the same time, yeah, maybe the wrong team won just for the fact in this instance that the Elite has had belts like consistently, like maybe not consistently, but a lot more, obviously. And
Yeah, the
so
way
I
that
think,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no, go right ahead.
The way that I looked at it was, since this is just a trios match, non-title, I think if they want to keep the rivalry going and have the Acclaimed, be portrayed as a legitimate threat to the titles, they could have dropped a win to them. That was
Yeah.
my only thought. I don't think it like hardcore matters, but that was just a thought. And then I don't know, this might just be pure speculation, but I do wonder if maybe them winning was a setup for, obviously, the Bucks are dealing with Bowens and Caster, but then Okada doesn't really have kind of a dance partner for the future. And then, when they went to beat down Tanahashi, Billy Gunn made the save. So I'm wondering, okay, are we going to have like Billy Gunn challenging for
Oh.
Okada's title? That's the Continental title, right? They have so many freaking championships. I can't even remember. Yes, Continental
I want to
champion.
say yes.
Yep.
Okay.
That's so why that always confuses me is because they also have an international championship.
Yeah.
And you mix those two together, it's intercontinental title. So it's like, oh boy. Oh yeah. So I don't know if that was like a setup. And so in that regard, if it's going to spin into something with Billy and Okada, then sure. But like the Acclaim still could have went over, and then they could have like, maybe
They
whether
could
celebrate,
have-
hit him from behind and then go to beat down
Yes.
Tanahashi and still set that up. So I don't know. Just a thought. It's not a huge deal, but
No, I'm inclined to agree. Like if they're trying to set something up there, they could have not won. It would have been fine. That their heelness wouldn't have like gone away, especially if they attacked Tanahashi afterwards while they were celebrating. I feel like that's a bigger move than just a beat down in the ring
yeah.
that he got.
So what do you want to rate this match? I'm going to go 4.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 4 too.
That's fair. Okay, cool.
I just like to rate with my heart. I'm like trying not to go, but like all the wrestlers in that match were phenomenal.
No, it was
so.
really solid for sure. Okay, in the next match, Bryan Danielson defeated Shingo Takagi by submission and a Owen Hart Cup Tournament first round match. This was the first longer match. Actually, The second longest match on the whole card, 20 minutes and 20 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Thoughts on this one?
Hold on. I'm trying to
I'll hop
replay it
in.
in
I'll
my
hop
head.
in while you're getting your
Yeah.
thoughts. So, for the fact that they have now upped the stakes for the Owen tournament, and then each winner from the men and the women are going to get a title shot. To me, at some point in Brian's AEW run, like you have to put the belt on him, right?
Yeah.
At some point. And with how much he's talking about how he's getting closer to the end, or at least like majorly slowing down so he can spend more time with his kids, I feel like, now would be a decent time. And this winner's going to go on to All In, and like it's going to be a huge match, and he's a huge star. And so I think this made sense. The one problem with having a New Japan person face him in the first round, and this was a sick match, and I liked the whole Japanese Dragon versus American Dragon angle.
Yeah.
They were very well matched up. I liked it all, but there were two problems with this matchup for me. It was hard for me to suspend my disbelief. I just still got caught up in the match, but the whole time I'm like, okay, when's Brian gonna get the 1, 2, 3? Because for two things, with him being in this tournament, I'm expecting him to win. I will actually be very surprised if he doesn't. And so if they want to, if they really want to surprise people, I think have him lose. I don't know if that would be necessarily the right move unless you're going to get him to the title at some other point. The second thing being, and I'll have more to say about this at the end when we rate the whole show, it is really hard for me to not expect an AEW star to go over against a New Japan star on these Forbidden Door cards, because historically, and I don't know what kind of freaking deal AEW is cutting with New Japan, but almost all these matches, AEW people go over, and it's not even close to being 50-50. I mean, even if it was like 60-40, it'd be one thing. Like it's overwhelmingly so more of the AEW people go over. And I mean, I don't know. That's not our business. That's New Japan and AEW's management prerogative, but
yeah. And maybe at the New Japan hosted one, it will be complete opposite. Who knows?
I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I do. Maybe they figure that they are getting a lot of exposure to an American audience, and it's still worthwhile as long as the matches are good and competitive. If I was their top brass, who, I mean, now it's Tanahashi, he's their president, I would be like, hey, we need to have more people going over. Like, it doesn't have to be every single one. And I suppose that the one that most counted, a New Japan person went over. We'll talk about that a little later, but just a thought. So when we were watching this, I there was no way I expected Takagi to actually win. But
I agree. Like, I think at this point we were both kind of like, well, it's nah, but they put on a great match. And like, I liked how at one point, or at least how I interpreted it, because the crowd was loud or whatever, but like him mocking Brian's
the yes
little
chance.
yes chance or whatever in Japanese. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And then he's just like, fine, boo me. And they're like, oh, you suck and everything. It was fun. And they matched each other so well. Like, it was a great opening to this tournament, like for a first round type of deal. I really liked it.
Well, I know Danielson now has went over to Japan. I almost kind of want to, I would love to see another one of these, like on Takagi's home soil.
Yeah.
It's interesting. As much as Shingo's awesome, this isn't like the matchup that I would have expected.
Yeah.
For Brian, but I suppose now, he's worked Okada, he's worked a lot of the big names, and so, naturally, probably actually size-wise, this one makes a lot more sense than, some of the other bigger guys that are in New Japan. Yeah, I love this match, and much like we can have come to expect from Bryan Danielson matches, it was a banger. Let's rate it. I'm gonna go 4.75.
I'm still a solid 4.
Okay, that's great. That's fine.
Yeah, because
Uh,
I really did like a lot of the matches on this card. So
yeah, it was very consistent for sure. In the next match, Timeless Tony Storm with Luther and Mariah May at ringside defeated Mina Shirakawa by pinfall to retain the AEW Women's World Title. Thoughts on this?
weird ending. And I'm not talking about the end of the match.
Are you talking about the three-way makeout?
Yeah. The hug it out, the shake it out, the hug it out, the make it out. I was like, all right. Mostly because like I'm not following the storyline here. So like you filled me in on some of it, and like with that in mind, it makes sense. Otherwise, just coming in like not knowing, you're just like, what's happening here?
Yeah, it was a fun like love triangle, match with kind of a nice little happy ending. So we were discussing this. I'm a big fan of the Timeless Tony Storm gimmick, and you're kind of a
On the
little
fence.
lukewarm to it, but on the fence, yeah. So I think all this works. So Mina Shirakawa is obviously like she's pretty over the top, and Mariah May is. It all works because like
It's over the top.
everybody's over the top.
I
And yeah, this was another one that even though, so Mina's from Stardom, which is the women's league from New Japan. This was one, even though I was just, saying like, man, they needed to have more New Japan people win these matches. I think they're really on a heck of a run with Tony Storm. And so like,
Yeah.
I think they want to probably keep that momentum. And with the title online, I think this was the right call, but I think everybody, left happy because of the kind of, oh, we're just one weird polyamorous group now.
Yeah.
At the end.
At the very least, they're friends.
Yeah. Special friends.
Yeah,
I really, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that, yeah, like from what I can tell, from what you were saying with like Tony's gimmick right now is like it seems to be going fantastically, like she's killing it and it's really over. And so like if her run isn't like slowing down, I would have done the same thing. I would have kept the belt on her.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the end game for her is. I imagine that she'll keep this title until at least All in London. So I'm curious to see where it's going to go. Obviously, this was just a stopgap for this show, but I think they made an interesting story out of it. Or some of these, the one thing I will say about some of these Forbidden Door matches, and it's been the same in the past, where they just kind of throw them together and there's very little story. And some of the matches even on this card were like that, but I think they did a better job this year than they had in prior years. Because remember the first two that were like, they weren't announcing matches until like the week of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and they're like, here you go. And we're like, and we're supposed to be super invested. How?
Yeah, this was a little more thought out.
There were still good matches, but yeah, like having that build up and that storyline makes you anticipate those matches and makes you more excited to see them versus just like, oh, by the way.
Yeah, because to be honest, I didn't know who Amina was before they brought her on AEW television and then, like introduced this love triangle thing. And I wouldn't have known that like her and Mariah May had this kind of like, are they friends? Are they lovers sort of thing over in Stardom, and that they were tag partners. So they did a good job in the build up to this to like make that actually mean something. Because yeah, it would have been, now I know what you were saying where like you were having a hard time like watching the weekly stuff to like know what was going on. So it was kind of like, why are they making out? But yeah. I do think that they did at least like, if you did watch the weekly shows, or were at least caught up via social media, you at least knew what was going on. It wasn't just like, okay,
Yeah.
so are they just trying to like appeal to the male gaze? Like there was actually a story here. So
Yeah.
let's rate this. I'm gonna go 4.5. I really thought this was a solid match.
I'm going to 3.75
Okay.
because it was a
Lowest one
solid
so
match,
far.
but like
Okay.
I think it's because like there was nothing wrong. They were great and everything. It just like I don't know, maybe like I don't know. Something just didn't fully get there for me.
That's okay. That's okay. All right, let's move it on. In a singles match, Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Orange Cassidy by submission. So if you're keeping count at home, folks, Zack Sabre Jr. was the first non-AEW person on this card to go over on an AEW person. We both reacted pretty strongly to that because we're like, oh, hey, it finally happened.
Yeah.
And but don't get too excited, folks, if you're listening to this or if you watch this, because you're not going to see too many more of those after this one. This was a Clash of Styles and a freaking banger, and proof also that both these guys, but I'm going to just especially put some love out to Orange Cassidy because Zack Sabre Jr. still does his thing. He can work with anybody, but he still does his thing. Orange Cassidy can work any fucking style ever, it seems like, though. And it's so surprising. And so, and I guess like his whole gimmick is he's supposed to like you're supposed to lower your expectations of him. And yeah, these guys absolutely cooked. I loved this match.
It was really hard to lower your expectations when you know now how good he can wrestle versus when he first showed up.
Well, so even with this one, though, I was curious to see how this would play out because of how submission forward ZSJ is. And I know we've seen Orange do a little bit of mat wrestling, but not to this extent.
No, this was probably one of my favorite matches because, like, I was not expecting it. Like, not only did I not expect the outcome, but like that they would work so well together is the thing. Is because
this was good foresight on the I don't want to give a ton of credit to Tony Khan, but I'm gonna do it because I think on paper this makes zero sense, it seems just like, okay, well, Orange Cassidy doesn't have a match. Let's throw him with old Zack Sabre Jr. But I do think they did again another little bit of praise for their booking. It was they had a little more foresight to it. They did a good job of like Zack Sabre Jr. is the purist. Orange Cassidy doesn't take anything serious, and he just kind of just floats through wrestling life, and that offends Zack Sabre Jr. because of how much of a purist he is. Boom, there's a story. And they did a really good job at like playing that out actually in the ring too, like how pissed off he was about putting his hands in the pockets and all that shit.
Oh yeah, and he was like, I'm gonna pin you with my hands in my pockets. And at one point he didn't win on that one, obviously, but like he did, and it was like he did a thing.
Yeah.
It pissed him off so much. And like,
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, usually like submission wrestling, even though it's like cool, it's not my go-to style that I like. So I think this is like only the second Zack Sabre Jr. match that I've liked.
Yeah.
Like really enjoyed. So I think the other one was him and Bryan Danielson doing submissions back and forth. Was that one? Am I thinking of the wrong
that one, but there was
was that wrong?
There was one that you and I watched. It was at a Wrestle Kingdom. He was wrestling oh my gosh.
Was it not Bryan?
Why am I forgetting his name? No, they definitely wrestled, and that was a banger. But there was another one that you and we watched together, and you were like, he kind of blew your mind, and you were saying the same thing. You're like, I don't even like submission wrestling, but holy shit, this guy's really good. Sonata.
That was it.
It was him and Sonata wrestling. Yeah. But yeah, he did have an absolute banger with Brian as well. So you're probably thinking of all three matches for sure,
Probably.
but really, really good stuff. Yeah, this one was no exception. It's interesting. I kind of, he's worked in England and in Japan for so long, and he's done like some of these stints in the States, or one-offs and whatnot. He does seem really tailor-made to the AEW style and product. It does make me wonder. I think he's a little too brash and a little too foul-mouthed for WWE's product, unless they're getting more edgy again, and I hear that they're going to maybe do that more so when they go to Netflix. But it's hard for me to imagine him on right now in more of a PG product. But I could think of, if you ever, obviously he doesn't need to, but if you ever wanted to come to the States and like sign with the company, like Impact or AEW, I think, he'd really stand out in Impact more so, but I think he could be good in both those companies. And obviously he brings a style that is going to stand out anywhere because it's kind of it's the throwback that not many people are doing. But yeah, praise to Orange. I do think this was, since it was non-title, this was a smart move to have a New Japan person go over. And this is another one. It's like, have Orange go to Japan or England and, do it.
I would watch them wrestle more, honestly.
Well, shit. Okay, let's think about this. They're going to All In. Maybe have Zach and Orange on that show, like a rematch.
That would be cool. Like, yeah, especially since they'll be in England. Like, that's a great place.
I know it's not co-branded, but
like, we can have a surprise as a treat.
Yeah, why not? You can give Cynthia Zack Sabre Jr. match just as a treat. Just one match, just as a treat.
Just like, especially since it's like not my usual go-to. Like, just surprise me.
Yeah, but praise to both these guys because you have to be a really good wrestler to have like a very specific style, but then be able to adapt to anybody. And it seems like both of them can, and they made magic. Let's rate this thing. This is a 5 for me.
Same. 5.
Yeah. Won't be the last 5 I give, but there's not going to be many of them, and so this was a definite standout for me. Okay, in the next match, another trios match. We had Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata defeating the Learning Tree consisting of Chris Jericho and Big Bill and Jeff Cobb, and they were accompanied by Brian Keith by pinfall. So this was an interesting one. I mean, like Jeff Cobb was the New Japan representative. Shibata, I guess, was, but like from what my understanding is, like I don't even know if he works over there anymore because he's been kind of like full time at AEW. Or I don't know if he's just doing like an excursion.
I thought he was an AEW guy now.
Let's check it out. Let's see here. Yeah, he is currently. He's currently signed full time to AEW and no longer. I guess he has a working relationship with them, with New Japan, but he is signed full time to AEW. It says. So I mean, he's made so much of his career in Japan that maybe that's what they were figuring. So thoughts on this match?
Well, two things come straight to mind.
I can't wait. That was a heck of an intro.
Well, the first is when Joe's in the corner on the outside of the ring and Hook can you repeat his name? I don't want to say it wrong.
Katsuyori Shibata?
Shibata. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Because my brain went Shibata, Brett. Okay. Sorry. And then who was it? Was it Jericho who did the flying move and they just walked away and the proud look on Joe's face? He's like, yeah, they did the thing.
Yeah.
That one got me. I really enjoyed that. And then Hook. Just it's like I've seen him wrestle some, and I'm so glad he's getting more. Once again, I've been dipping in and out, so I don't know how long he's been actually like doing a lot of his wrestling because most of when I was consistently watching was him eating a bag of chips in the corner.
And I'm assuming he was training that entire time.
Oh, I hope so.
But
He probably was. But like just seeing how like he's a little freaking powerhouse.
yeah,
Like he's
we were
not that
talking
big of
about
a
it. It's
yeah,
absurd how strong he is. The fact that
yeah,
he was picking up Jeff Cobb, who's a big freaking guy, he's picking up Big Bill, huge man, and just
yeah.
chucking him. And
It's just like this is
yeah,
fine.
he's obviously in really good shape and ripped up, but he's not like a big dude.
No, he's compact and like, but it's
He's
like, and he's
very
quick
strong.
too. I was noticing that he's also quick and he's like solid, and it's just like he impressed me more than honestly I ever thought he would,
Yeah,
considering how he began.
his whole run's been great. He also sells really well. My only knock on him, well, I have two knocks on him. I do think he is still a little green in the sense of sometimes his timing is a little wonky, and I know that he has like some legitimate like amateur wrestling background and some fighting, and
Mhm.
sometimes he moves a little quicker than the pace of what a pro wrestling match is, and so
Okay.
it's not a ton, and it's just a minor thing, but and I think he's young. Give him, another 5, 6 years, he's gonna be in like ridiculously good. And obviously he's not great on the mic. That was my only other knock, but
Oh yeah.
he has a character that doesn't necessarily need to be amazing on the mic. So that works. I mean, like
And
this
plus they
silent
have him
stoic
paired.
type.
Sorry.
That was it. That was all I was gonna say.
Oh yeah. No, but like was it for this? He was paired with Samoa Joe, and Joe is he can talk. So
Oh yeah,
like
for sure.
if you want to keep them hooked up for a while, like Joe can get him over easily on the mic, and then he's got the skills, albeit a little green, like which I totally agree with, like to back up whatever Joe says. So like, oh yeah, and then you've got the other side, the other half of this match, which is Chris Jericho in his learning tree gimmick.
Yeah,
Um,
we were talking about that. This is working for me. Like some of his more recent gimmicks didn't quite land with me, and like he's smart where he tries something, and if it doesn't work, he brooms it.
mhm.
This is working for me, and it's funny. I know I was knocking the Young Bucks for being too over the top, but it's so it's kind of not to an end. Like, and they're not like it feels like they're being over the top without any focus. Where he's clearly
For
being
the
over the
sake of
top.
being over the top.
So yeah, where it makes a lot of sense for he's being over the top, like because he took the fan reaction of he's not putting over young talents, but when he won this title from Hook, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna lean into that, and he's doing the like, oh, I'm smiling at everybody, on camera, but I'm an asshole. I'm, throwing my weight around backstage, and he's like building this kind of like, he's kind of doing a meta thing where he's taking what people are perceiving of him online, and then also kind of there's clearly some Hogan inspiration there as well, where oh, come under the learning tree, kid, and then he's like using young people to put himself more over.
Yeah.
I love it. It's very smart, Mark wink at the fans, but in
Yeah.
this
Like,
day and age in wrestling, I think that works.
oh, it totally does. And I think that's one, like, it honestly reminds me of the Young Bucks back in the day when everyone's like, oh, you're killing wrestling and stuff like that. You're taking all this stuff. And they would lean into it. And they had that, it put them over the top. Like, it was
Yeah.
great. And the fact that we can see Jericho like doing the same thing and it still works. Just that wink of the nudge, and you like bring like what the fans are talking about and saying, and you bring it into the storyline. I feel like it also feels like the fans are included in that more so than if you're just like, here's my character and here's my gimmick and stuff like that. And Jericho is He's so good.
Oh
He's
yeah,
so
for
good at
sure.
being an asshole.
Oh yeah, so the other reason I think why his stuff is getting over and actually getting real heat is the it's so condescending when he's like he
Oh yeah.
stops and waves at everybody and like, hey guys, and it's like he even kind of like he talks a little differently. I've noticed that when he does those like promos on Instagram where he talks with kind of like a high, really happy voice and he's like overly enthusiastic. I don't know. I love it all. I really like also, let's be honest, they have not done very many interesting things with Big Bill. Like
Yeah.
that guy, there are not too many 7 feet tall people walking the face of the earth. There are not too many
No.
7 feet tall wrestlers walking the face of the earth that also can move like he can. And it's like, what are you doing with this guy? And so Jericho knows his stuff. And I feel like he saw the opportunity to go, I'm in this sniveling, like veteran wrestler character that's a coward and, trying to hang on to his spot. And what's a better way to hang on your spot than to, have a big heater that is always going to ensure that you're going to win.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's good for Big Bill as well because he hasn't done anything very interesting in my opinion.
I agree.
So yeah, I love the pairing. I like the name. I like how he changed his gear. He changed his music.
His freaking little logo on his trunks of him like in the Da Vinci Man, but he's got little tree roots instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Vitruvian Man. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. And also it's funny and ironic that like he's getting all this heat for not putting anyone over. And yet like you've got, like you said, Big Bill working with him who hasn't had much to do. And like in a roundabout way, he's using them, but he's putting them over.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, like Big Bill's benefiting from this pairing. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if it's going to be, them as the main thing and he's like the student and Jericho's the teacher. It's totally working for me that Jericho has that title and now is the For the World Championship thing. He changed it. That kills me too. I love it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be mad if they had a tag title run of some sort, and if it's not going to be, if they don't want it to be the main titles because the Bucks have them, you have a million titles because of the Ring of Honor, since they own Ring of Honor. And we were talking about that. We were watching it where it's it kills me that they have this other company and they're not really doing anything super interesting with it. They don't even have, weekly television. It's just stuff you see on Instagram or if they have their champions perform on AEW. And so the most interesting that any of Ring of Honor's titles have been in a while are when their big AEW stars had them. Claudio, Jericho, Joe. And so to me, it's kind of like I can't even tell you who the ROH tag champs are. And so maybe do something interesting where put the belts on Jericho and Big Bill and, and have I feel like they could do a thing where Jericho's see, you're under the learning tree and look at you now, you're a champion. And, those titles are kind of inconsequential at this point, but they can make them mean something more. So just a thought. Let's rate this match. What do you think?
I think I'm going to go back to 375, 3.75.
I agree. It wasn't as thrilling, in ring wise, technically as some of the others, but it was definitely really entertaining. It was kind of a fun mixture of, people that shouldn't really go together, but they were together.
It was a solid match.
It was enjoyable.
Didn't pop the way the other ones do.
Yeah, I agree. 3.75 as well. In the next match, a ladder match for the vacant AEW TNT Championship, Jack Perry, the Scapegoat, defeated Konosuke Takeshita, Mark Briscoe, Dante Martin, Leo Rush, and El Phantasmo. Had an interesting mix of people. We had some outsiders in Leo Rush and El Phantasmo. Although Leo Rush has been showing up a lot, so I don't know if he's like kind of signed part time. That's AEW contracts are so weird.
Yeah.
But I know he works. I know he works indies as well. El Phantasmo is definitely New Japan. But what do you think? Did the right person win here? And what did you think about the match as a whole?
I know there was a lot of spots where like it made me hurt, which means
it was brutal.
It was a good ladder match.
It was brutal.
But I don't know how much of it's personal that I didn't want him to win. Like, I wasn't excited that he won. Like, I didn't realize that until he won, honestly, because I was just all like, I have no preference. And then when he got it, I'm like, I didn't want that. I don't know.
It makes a lot of sense, though. Like, because they've been pushing him as a top guy since he came back. And being in the stable that he's in, they're all champions. They're quote unquote running the show. It makes a lot of sense. I also think that
it does.
He was really cooking until things got derailed with that stupid CM Punk fight. And I think that took a lot of his momentum away. So this is a good way to get it back. And then as much as I'm not a huge fan of the Bucks' current gimmick, you know, it's what we've got, and the Elite run the show now in storyline, and so it makes a ton of sense. It also makes a ton of sense.
It totally does, but that doesn't mean I wanted it.
Oh, apparently. I agree. Actually, for me, I actually would have preferred Takeshita. I think that he's this absolute gem that is put on incredible matches, and he's getting featured pretty prominently, but it's like, when are we going to pull the trigger on this guy? Like, he's legit one of their best wrestlers that he's not booked as prominently as I think marketable American stars in the same company, i.e. a lot of ex-WWE people. I'm not trying to, shit on that or anything, but he, even though he's Japanese, he has maybe one of the best mouthpieces in wrestling with Don Callis. And so he's a heat machine.
Yeah.
And the guy can freaking go. So to me, I was like, let's get him even like further up, in the top guys. And I think a title could really help that out.
Oh yeah.
But
I agree.
This made sense to me, and no offense to the other guys, I didn't see any of them winning. Maybe Mark Briscoe for like a feel good thing. But so I'm not mad about it, but
sorry.
I thought it was possible because they've really been pushing him, on this singles run since his brother died, and I was rooting for him. There was a few times where they teased like, oh, like, is he gonna win? I would have been completely pleased with that, but it makes total sense. This was a great match. I do think that Jack Perry's a good heel. I'm surprised. I didn't necessarily expect it, but he's got an attitude, and like to use that for storytelling purposes. I think that can work, and fortunately, I do still think it was a really dumb move to show that CM Punk fight footage because I don't think it gave him any more heat. It made them look like idiots, and all it did is confirm CM Punk's story was real. And so it was dumb, but fortunately that's far enough past. I don't think he's going to be further hurt by that. And so...
Yeah. I never saw it. I didn't care to. I thought it was a immature
It was dumb. Yeah.
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was pathetic, to be honest. But
and
I don't think it was any
CM Punk.
I don't think it was his choice or any of the Elite for that matter. But this was a crazy spot fest. What's wild is like this isn't a short match, but this felt like it was longer than this. It was 16 minutes and 55 seconds.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
would have guessed it was at least 20, but yeah, 1655, which is still pretty significant. But classic car crash ladder match. Any other thoughts on it before we rate it?
I liked it.
I did too. I'm gonna go 4.75 again.
It's a solid 4 for me.
Okay. In the next match, Mercedes Moné defeated Stephanie Vaquer by submission to win both the retain,
Oh, that's right.
because the winner takes
Retain
all
and
match
win.
retained the TBS championship and win the New Japan Strong Women's title that she lost from Willow. Okay, so this was another one that it was impossible for me to. Well, okay, I shouldn't say it was impossible, because I will say this was an incredibly compelling and competitive match.
Oh yeah.
And if people didn't know who Stephanie Vaquer was, me being
I
one of
didn't.
them before, you freaking know her now. She's
Oh,
incredible.
for reals.
She blew me away. And there was a lot of close calls, and I kind of thought, like, are they gonna just do like a shocker, But I still, in the end, it was really hard to doubt that Mercedes wasn't gonna win. Especially, I felt the same way when she won the TBS title. It was like, okay, they have been protecting her by not having her wrestle at all on TV, and she's been in the company now for a while, and this is her first match. Like, it's impossible. She's not going to lose. And then, so this is what, her second match? She's not going to lose. And I think they have a bit of a problem with her. It's been revealed now that, like, she has creative control over her character, which is a mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Every instance of that in professional wrestling has eventually turned bad. It's one thing if somebody has input. I know, like, Roman Reigns has input, and he deserves it. He knows what he's doing with his character, and he also knows when it's time to take an L the right time. It doesn't have to be all the time, but the right time for the better of another wrestler or the company. And his output goes to show that, like, he should have input. But in the end, Triple H makes the calls. The Rock has a lot of input because, like, he's like one of the shareholders of TKO. But he literally is like an owner in the company that owns them. And again, Triple H in the end makes the call.
Mm-hmm.
She is just a wrestler. And yes, she's a big name, but to me, that's insane. And like, if there was any proof that she's booking herself ahead of whatever the betterment of the company is, it's becoming a double champion. And I'm not trying to, like, dump on her. I do think, like, I think she's incredible. But a lot of the hubbub about her, kind of being difficult and having a big ego, it's hard not to believe that. Obviously, we don't know for a fact, but that's the problem with people that have creative control. It's like, if they have an ego, they will almost always book themselves to go over and be like a double champion and shit like that. And it's
so the only possible way I can think that this wasn't completely selfish is to, and it's a stretch. But, like, because they had such a phenomenal match and she took the title from her, I can see a rematch there. But the surprise return of Britt Baker at the end and clearly challenging for a title, you don't walk out there and just for funsies and be like, hey, I'm back. That is clearly a challenge. And maybe that's her going, okay, she's going to have these two storylines with these two great wrestlers. And she's going to drop maybe the AEW title to Britt after some good back and forth. That's
maybe I like to be optimistic. I'd like to be optimistic in that she would, put, like, women's wrestling ahead of herself.
I would hope
but
so, but like I said,
she doesn't
it's
even
a bit
work
of a
TV
stretch, but I
matches
would hope.
though. And I mean, I get it. So here's the thing. I think she has a very conflated view of herself. I think she thinks she's like a Roman Reigns, like a generational talent, and is such a big star that like I only have to work a few times, you know, or several times a year.
She
Um,
hasn't earned that yet.
I mean, she's. I think she will go down in history as one of the all-time female greats for sure.
Yes.
But you know what the thing I've always said, and like apparently now she's also they didn't why she left WWE is because she wanted more money than Charlotte. They wouldn't give it to her, and AEW apparently paid her more money. She is legit, like she has now, it's a record. She's the highest paid female wrestler in history, which good for her. Get your money.
Yeah.
I think
But
there's an argument to be made like, yeah, she should be like top 5 highest paid women right now, but to me it's like I'm sorry, you're not Charlotte Flair. Like I think for the women, like she's up there for me. And it's not quite Mercedes, but that's maybe just personal preference. I think she's incredible, but
I think she's great. She's a great wrestler and everything, but like you said, like she's no, it sounds terrible like comparing her to Roman, but like we've already used that. Like she's no Roman Reigns, she's no Charlotte Flair. Like, because I feel like as much as I sometimes get annoyed very easily by Charlotte Flair, which probably has more to do with the like, let's just put the title on her so she can get title counts and everything.
yeah.
She's fantastic. Like she has like there's just something
She also knows how to put people over though.
Exactly. And I feel like there's just something that Mercedes is missing to be on that level, and it probably has to do with some selfishness.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and I because why I brought up Roman Reigns is because just the way she kind of talks about herself, I do think that she thinks she is like the top wrestler in the world. I think she's one of them for sure, but you know, like the top person in a company, I don't even think she's the top person in AEW, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And again, that's just me, but I like I could see an argument for like, yeah, she's top 10 in the world, men and women. But anyways, all that to say,
Great match.
it was a great match, and I don't know, maybe she's gonna really make this New Japan Strong title mean even more by being because she 100% is a big freaking name, and she's a crossover star. She's in freaking Star Wars, man. She's a huge name for sure. So that's a big pickup by AEW. I just don't know if like the highest paid woman in the world ever, that's a lot of money for them to be throwing out for somebody that
hasn't proven anything yet.
And then they're giving all the control to, it's like, oh boy, like, is she going to actually like help out your women's division? Because it's interesting. AEW's women's division has been so up and down. Like at times it's been incredible, and it's like, oh man, like they're as good as WWE, and sometimes like maybe they're better, and then it's like been taking real big dips. I know that injuries have been a problem, especially with like the top women like Thunder Rosa and Britt. But it's interesting to kind of hinge all that on one person. Then it's also like, okay, so she's the quote unquote kind of mid-card champion right now for the women. Like, is she going to be content with not being, the world champion? It's like, I don't know. It's just seeing what happened with like WCW, for instance. It's like when they say like creative control with the wrestler, I'm like, oh, that's a bad idea. And it's not the first time that they've let the inmates run the asylum, so to speak, in AEW. And I do think that's contributed to some of the problems. Honestly, they gave
Yeah,
CM Punk too much control as well.
I feel like there should be input. You should let your people have the ability to express creativity because like sometimes they do know their characters, they do have great ideas. I feel like you should listen,
Yes.
but also at the same time, you should have the ability to go, no, that's stupid. That's very selfish. We're looking to do something more for this person. We want to give this person a shot. And
well, the buck needs to stop with a boss, and the boss needs to be, or at least needs to have people around them that really know like long-term storytelling and booking. And like having a big money player have full creative control, just like to give them that contract, that amount of money, just to get them away from WWE definitely screams I'm a trust fund child. I'm a trust fund kid with a huge bank account. And also like it also screams, like not having a lot of foresight into like what works in wrestling and just kind of like yeah, he's a rich fan that owns a company. And
yeah. And like at the beginning it seemed pretty cool because you got so much new stuff, but like as time goes on, I just want him to stop.
But all that to say, I do think that she had a great match against Willow in her first match. Yeah. This was maybe even better. And so, we might both be dead wrong. Maybe she won't book it selfishly, and maybe
I hope so.
Maybe she has great creative ideas, and because she certainly, and I never doubted this in WWE either, in ring and like character work and promos, she definitely should be considered at the top. I think maybe her ego is a little out of check, but fantastic match. I want to see more Stephanie Vicker. I don't know if we will, but maybe at some point.
Hopefully.
Rating for this match.
I'll say a 4.25.
I'm going to say 4.75.
Nice.
It was quite good. You know what? 4.85. I want to have a little distinction over my other two 4.75s because I do think that even though the deck was stacked so much against Vicker, there was a couple of near falls there that I was like, oh my God, are they going to have her win? And that was not as evident in like the Bryan Danielson Takagi match, which was fantastic. But that was one where I was like, I never once believed that Takagi was going to win. Even though it was competitive. But
the one downside, I think, to the ending of that match is that I feel like when Stephanie tapped out that last time, like
it was way too fast.
Way too fast.
Yeah. And then unfortunately, and I get it, you gotta, Britt is a big return. You gotta, you gotta build up your next rivalry. I think that kind of overshadowed Vicker. Because if it was me, I think that maybe like Mercedes should have put her over, like, raised her hand or whatever, but it definitely became like a big celebration. Well, she's a heel, I don't know, so I guess that's not appropriate. Because, like when she was like looking at herself and her title, like, she was playing it up. Part of me is like, she's a good heel because maybe she's not a very nice person in real life. But yeah, obviously, that's a huge money match. Like that's a big one. I'm very curious to see how that plays out though, because if Mercedes goes over in however many matches that her and Britt have, I would say that that's a bad sign.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
But I don't know. Then it's kind of like, are we trying to like really build up this TBS title to be more on the level of the women's title? Like, so maybe she should have it for a while, but I don't know. I guess we'll see if that whole thing of like she never works TV matches continues to. I think that's also a bad sign, but time will tell. Yeah. In the co-main event, Tetsuya Naito defeated Jon Moxley to win the IWGP world heavyweight title, and this was the only other match where a New Japan wrestler actually went over on an AEW wrestler.
I love this match.
I'm gonna have a hot take for you.
Okay. Hot take me.
I was disappointed in it.
With how it ended?
I told the whole thing.
The whole thing?
I know it was gonna disappoint you. Yeah, that was said it was a hot take. Yeah, I don't know, man. It just felt like they felt like they didn't have the best chemistry. It wasn't horrible, but it felt off. There was some mistimed stuff, and it just felt off. And by the time it was over, so this match was 17 minutes and 5 seconds. I would have swore it was a half hour long, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of dragging on. I don't know. This is like, I could tell that, like, by the look on your face that you're just like, you totally disagree. But
no, like some of the things you're saying, like, yeah, I think part of it is you've got two of my favorite wrestlers in a match together.
No, for sure. Like, I had very high expectations for this, and I think maybe I didn't feel like it lived up to it quite.
That's fair. I honestly, the ending surprised the shit out of me, because like I kind of like, I'm so glad Naito won. I am. And am I sad that Moxley lost? Yeah, but like that's what happens when two of my favorites, like, you know, oh my god, sorry, my brain's just buffering.
No, you're fine. I think the right person won. They needed another New Japan win. I really like that Moxie became the champion, and I think that that's good for both companies. It keeps him as a top guy for both companies. It keeps him busy and away from the AEW World Championship, because like, he's a top guy. He needs to be treated like a top guy, but he doesn't really need to be in the title picture right now. And so
and like, I think like knowing a lot of Mox's background and like stuff, because I read his book and all his interviews and stuff, is like he wants to be able to basically go everywhere, wrestle anyone. Like he wants to have those opportunities. And yeah,
he loves Japanese wrestling. So
yeah,
I think, so, yeah, like, it's a legacy thing for him to have been the champion, but he didn't need to be champion for a really long time.
No.
And they clearly, it's good to have that kind of like mix up every now and again, where it's like, oh yeah, somebody from another company or an American won this title, but like Naito is one of their guys, like one of their top full-time guys, and so it makes total sense.
Oh yeah, it does. And like, but I just didn't know which way they were going to lean, because like, once again, it's an AEW pay-per-view. They typically win, but like,
oh for sure. I felt the same way, even though it was for the IWGP title. I thought, I bet you he's not going to drop this until he goes back to Japan.
Yeah, no, I think it was really cool, because they've already had like a couple back and forth, and like as it showed in like the promos and stuff, it got dirty, it got bloody and stuff.
Yeah.
And so like, I think I was only slightly disappointed that it didn't go as all out. I mean, it was still a good match, but you know me, I like my matches with a little bit of murder.
Yeah.
But like, just, yeah, I guess for me, it was more of a feel good sort of match of like, oh, I watch my like two favorites. But yeah, it wasn't honestly one of their greatest. It just made me happy.
Yeah, and when I say that it was disappointing, I guess I was just expecting it to, at the end, to be like, well, that was clearly one of the best matches. And I honestly, this is a really consistent card for the most part. I think this was probably like my least favorite match, just because it felt like a drug, and it felt like they just weren't totally clicking with the timing, and Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel good about that. Like I wanted it to be better than how I perceived it anyways.
Yeah.
Just because yeah, I really like both guys as well, but it was yeah, I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it. As I was watching it, I'm like this just isn't.
Yeah, no, like what you were saying, like I was like, okay, yeah, you there's some merit to that because it did seem a little bit longer than it actually was. And it wasn't like one of their freaking better matches, but I think why I'm gonna give it the number I'm gonna give it is because like I said, it made me happy. It's
Which
one
is
of my feel good matches.
which is what number?
5.
Wow. Okay.
Like
Wow.
no, okay,
This is
so
gonna be wild because I'm gonna give it a 3.
it was totally valid. But like I said, like you've got two of my favorite freaking wrestlers. You have them going for it. They surprised me with the ending. Like, am I? And so like I think that was another thing that I was like, oh holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
because honestly, I could see either of them winning, but realistically, my expectations were honestly Mox winning. And so the
Yeah,
fact
me
that
too.
like Naito got it, I was just like, oh, it just it made me happy.
That's totally fair. That's
So
totally fair.
it might not realistically be a 5-star match, but it's a 5-star in my heart.
That's fair. That's totally fair. And in the main event, Swerve Strickland with Prince Nana defeated Will Ospreay by pinfall to retain the AEW World Championship. Thoughts?
That was a dope match.
It's banger, banger. You know, um, I know it's talked about a lot, where about how AEW has dropped the ball with a lot of ex WWE people, but some people have really shined. When
Hmm.
Swerve first went over there, I wasn't. I mean, like that was a WWE dropped the ball with him, and so it made
Yeah.
perfect sense that he would go somewhere else. And they cut him anyways. But it was like that guy had so much potential, and then like you just didn't do shit with him. But when he first went over, I wasn't 100% sure. I was like, there's maybe something here, but I don't know. I don't really think they're pushing him that well. But it's been a slow burn, but like he's
Yeah,
gotten bigger
for sure.
matches and bigger matches, better rivalries, and I think what really kind of put him over into the upper echelon was his rivalry with Sting and Darby, and then Hangman. The Hangman
Yeah.
rivalry, I think, made him,
Oh yeah.
and he, first Black AEW World Champion, and the guy can talk, he can work, he's cool, he can be a heel, he can be a babyface. He's kind of a tweener right now. He's got it all for sure, and so he's a rare exception that I think that AEW has done a really good job at like slowly building him up, and he is so much bigger and greater than he ever was in WWE.
I agree. Like I have to say, like at when it because it was a slow burn and like it's paid off phenomenally, but like apparently that's the word of the night for me. Um, but like at the beginning, I was just like tepid towards him. I was just all like,
That's fair.
all
Yeah.
right. And it's just like it's just another WWE person coming over.
Well, and then
But
if you remember when they brought him in, it was like he shows up at a pay per view like, oh, we got this big signing, and this was in the midst of like they've done that so many times, just like
yeah,
this is a ratings boost. Like we have an announcement, and then we're gonna make an announcement, and and it's like,
yeah,
and I think maybe he kind of just like got initially a little lost in the in the shuffle with that because it's like they're making an announcement over people they're signing every freaking week. It seemed like for a while there,
oh
and
yeah,
but I think he's grown past that.
oh yeah. He's definitely blossomed, and
Yep.
it's awesome to see because you get these banger freaking matches and the storylines, and you get someone who works so well and very versatile.
He is very
it's definitely a
versatile.
win.
Yes, I'm glad you said that because obviously, and they went into it with like the build up to this match. Like these guys have a lot of history. They've they've been rivals, they've been friends, and it got really personal. And the whole thing was like, oh well, Swerve's like you don't have what it takes to like pull the trigger, but I do. But even with them paired up, I had two misconceptions that I'm really glad I was wrong about. The first one being, well, they have been pushing Will Ospreay to the fucking moon, which they should.
Yeah.
That guy, yeah, hop in.
I have to plug in my computer real quick.
Okay, I'm gonna vamp while you do that.
Okay, cool.
So they've been pushing him in to the absolute moon, and with good reason. Will Ospreay is a once in a lifetime talent, and he is gonna be a top guy for them as long as his body holds up. And they scored because I'm sure WWE was probably bummed when he signed with an American company that wasn't them. So with that being said, I 100% thought, man, they have been pushing Will Ospreay to the moon. He's undefeated. Swerve is going to be another transitional champion, just as Samoa Joe was. This is going to be a person that's going to be there to just put over the next person. Because I thought there's no freaking way that Will Ospreay is going to lose this match because they've been booking him in a way that it just didn't. I didn't believe it. So that was one misconception that I had. The other one being is that this would maybe potentially, even though I knew that they had worked together before, that it might be a bad matchup just stylistically. But boy, was I wrong, because Swerve, like you said, very versatile, can work with anybody. And I also think that Will has become such a good wrestler that he too can work with anybody, even though his style is a little more lent to the high flying stuff. So yeah, I am very happy to admit that I was wrong on both accounts, because as much as Will is an absolute star, I think it would have been a mistake to put the belt on him right now because he has time, and I think it would have been a mistake to take that belt from Swerve because I think he would have lost all momentum.
I agree. Because Ospreay has recently joined, and like I feel like you said, he has time. He just showed up. Like, and you have this guy who's been working his way up. I'm pretty sure if you put the belt on Ospreay, it would have gotten way more heat, and not in a good way. Like
fans would have rejected it, you think?
Yeah.
Swerve fans definitely would have. The other thing why I'm very glad they didn't do it. Like, he is the international champion. Like, he doesn't like let him continue to put that title over, because that title is really interesting. It was clearly like, oh gosh, this is the jobber title, and then Orange Cassidy made that really mean something. Mm-hmm. But then AEW has this thing. There's this pattern. You can always tell who's going to be a transitional champion. As soon as Orange dropped it to Roddy, I was like, oh, this poor guy. Like, he's going to be the sacrificial lamb for somebody that they clearly are more invested in. And so when they announced that Will was going to go up against him, I'm like, there's a snowball chance in hell that Roddy retains this. And I was right. And so they have this pattern. And that's also why I thought that maybe Will was going to win this belt. But if anything, if they want to keep that title interesting and not always be like, well, every other champion is just a transitional champion, and then we have somebody that puts it over, which is predictable and not a good way to book your title.
Yeah.
I think that they should really have him make that title mean something, because in my opinion, I kind of looked at it as like, why is this belt even a thing? And then Orange made it, in some instances, more interesting than the TNT title to me.
Yeah.
And so I think Will has an opportunity to keep that more interesting, because right now, as much as I love Okada, his title is the most uninteresting title in AEW, in my opinion. Sorry.
You're not wrong.
It's not his fault. Like, it didn't need to be a title in the first place. It's not his fault. But it was interesting when Eddie had all three of those belts. And to me, then it was like once he lost all those, and like then it was back to Okada just having the one that was created because Eddie had all those belts. I was like, okay. But anyways, that's another thing.
No, but like I agree. I think if you're gonna have someone make the current title that Ospreay has like mean anything, like, and not just like have it transitional and like build upon the foundation that Orange did, yeah, he's a fantastic name to have on that title. And so like it'll definitely benefit. Like, I don't see how you can't have it benefit from that. And yeah, make it more interesting instead of a predictable pattern. Because, like, was it for a while there, like, anytime someone was in their hometown in WWE, you knew that they were going to lose.
Yeah.
Like, it's just all like, oh, Bailey's in her hometown again. It was nice seeing her have a run.
Like, for real.
And so, like, when it gets predictable, it gets boring.
Yep.
And
100%.
like, what they should be doing is like striving for good storylines and like long lasting storylines and just like keep it interesting. And because once you do something stagnant and boring, people are going to look elsewhere. And then all that time you're making fun of WWE, people are probably going to go back to WWE because, let's be real, they're putting out some fantastic stuff.
Yes.
And so the fact that they keep ragging on them, like, at this point, it's just like, you guys, shut up.
Yeah, I mean, so AEW's made some really interesting decisions, some not so great as others. And I do think that they have, they've dipped a bit in quality. And it's kind of up and down. But the one thing I've always said is they still are delivering on their pay-per-views. I think this pay-per-view is proof of that. And they are still making some good decisions. And I think, like, Swerve is an interesting champion, and he's clearly over as all hell. And it's, even though he came from WWE, he was in WWE for a cup of coffee. It was only NXT. And so to me, he feels interesting because he's more of an indie guy than he was a WWE
he never really
guy.
got to thrive and like show off what he could really do in WWE. They, like we've said previously, like they dropped the ball with him, and luckily AEW was able to like nurture that and help it grow. And like look what you have now. You have Swerve as champion, and he's doing a freaking banger of a job. Like,
and he just keeps putting on great performances, and this was no exception to that. I loved it. I was very, very, very impressed. They had some exchanges in this match, just doing reversals that were mind-blowing.
Right?
Like, man, they have really good chemistry, and
they do.
And I don't know. I guess it was just like on paper, it was like, oh, this is, I don't know. I just had a hard time believing it was going to be as good as it was. Not that I didn't think it was going to be bad, but a lot of Swerve's matches that have been really his big matches in AEW have been really kind of more like brawling and violent. Like the stuff with Hangman and like the stuff with Darby and Sting was like really violent. And so, this being like a work rate sort of match, and it was almost 30 minutes, 27 minutes and 5 seconds. And
it did not feel that long.
That pace was ridiculous. That's probably why. Yeah. So I do think that with Will being in the international champion, they probably should go off and do their own thing, because like they need to have Will in a prominent role at All In, and I don't want to see them run this match back at then, because then I think that they would have Swerve drop the title. because it's
Yeah.
in London. Like, I don't think they're going to have Will lose twice to him. So I think you got to wait for this to come back around. And that's fine. They don't need to have an immediate rematch, especially with Will
Sure.
being a champion. If anything, what I'm expecting, especially with how involved MJF got into Will's match on Wednesday, I think Will and MJF are going to have a rivalry, which
Ooh,
is
that'll be
like
fun.
that's going to make that title mean even more
Oh
because
yeah.
MJF is a top guy.
And plus they were gonna be so good on the mic against each other. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
That's gonna be so much fun. And then the in-ring stuff will yes, I want this so
Here's the real
much.
question though. So if we think that's what's going to go down with Will, who do you think's going to challenge Swerve now?
Ooh. I don't know.
It's interesting. I'm guessing because let's see here. Is there? Let me look this up.
Huh.
Let's look up their pay-per-view schedule. I think that their next big show is All In.
Yeah, because that's in August, isn't it?
I believe so. Let's look here.
Let me check my calendar.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
August 25th.
yeah, it's the next one. My thought is, so it's already been announced that the winner of the Owen is going to challenge for the men's title there and the women's title there.
Ooh.
So I think it's got to be Danielson.
Yeah.
That's who I'm thinking is gonna
That would
win.
be good. Because as soon as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, that would be a great.
Yeah. So he's already in the finals. Because I wasn't aware he beat Pac this week. So the next semifinal hasn't been determined yet. It's Jay White and Hangman, which I didn't even know Hangman was back.
Me neither.
Which I have to say, with that promo that Jeff Jarrett cut in the beginning of it, that he was going to try to win it for Owen because they were actual friends and tag team partners, I'm disappointed that he lost the first round to Hangman. No offense to Hangman, but...
Yeah, no, I feel like you could have at least had him go to like round 2. Get him farther because of that history and stuff. And like, it would be the story there. The story would have been fantastic, but like...
Yeah.
I get it. He won't win in the final. I don't see him making the final, but at least getting past round 1.
So he did get past round 1, Jeff Jarrett, and he
did?
Hangman?
Oh, yeah. No.
yeah, and then so he's facing Jay White in the semifinals. I think he'll beat Jay White. No offense to Jay White, they've booked him to like not super great since he came to AEW, and so
I know, and it makes me so sad.
I don't see him. He's only strong when he's with the guns. It's like singles. It's not been impressive. But anyways, so I'm guessing, it looks like they're going to have the final on the July 10th Dynamite. I'm guessing the final is going to be Hangman and Danielson. It's like, Danielson's going to win that thing. I really feel like he is. Just to inform you, it looks like the finals for the women is going to be Mariah May. She beat Sheeta. And
okay.
And Willow.
Oh.
That's interesting.
I'd say Willow is probably taking it.
Yeah, they're both over, but yeah, I think you might be right. So I'm guessing that it's going to be Swerve and Brian.
That'd be good. That would be a good match.
But then that's another one. It's like, I don't know. I'm thoroughly convinced that like they got to pull the trigger on Brian at some point to be champion. But I don't know. I don't know if it's the time to do that with Swerve. I almost feel like have him go over and run that rivalry out a bit longer before you.
Yeah, like maybe
him drop the title.
Like when not entirely clean, or like do something where like you just make it personal or something and have them go back and forth and then have Brian get it. I don't know.
It's tough. Yeah, I don't know. if Hangman wins, I think Swerve will easily beat, not easily, but he'll beat him is what I was meaning to say. But
easily retain.
Yes, yeah. Anyways, so solid card altogether. What do you want to rate this card as a whole?
We didn't rate this last match.
We didn't?
No.
I thought I did. I'm sorry. 5 for me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Obvious answer.
Yeah. It was. I know I gave 5 elsewhere, but I think this was match of the night. If I was gonna Meltzer it, I'd say it was a 5.5. But no, 5's good. Yeah, it's.
This is probably honestly like out of my 3 5s. This is number 1. Cassidy was 2, and Mox and Naito would be 3.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. So now, as a whole, with the event, what do you think? I'm gonna go 4.5 for me.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning to. Honestly,
I think most of that averages out. I gave a lot of 4.5s.
I gave a lot of 4s. And the 5 balances out the 3.75. So it would probably be like a solid 4.5. And honestly, I think it fits.
Yeah, my only knock on it might have been a little higher. Because I do think that even though, I clearly had different thoughts than you on the Naito Moxley match, that wasn't bad. Good. It was pretty good, in my opinion. It was not bad. I don't think at least on the main card that we saw, there was not a bad match. The reason why it's not like top tier for me is I do think that the booking is very predictable, especially with these New Japan co-brandings, because not enough people from other companies are actually winning to keep it compelling. There's that. And then until they adopt the model that I think is far superior, 10 freaking matches is still too much.
So too much. We literally immediately started discussing this when we were watching it.
So full disclosure for people that are listening, we watched this, and so we did pause it a few times and we're bullshitting about things, but so either way, it was still a 4-hour card. And then the fact that that may not sound like a lot compared to what things used to be, but they used to have even more matches. And then if you'll notice, production wise, AEW does not do breaks between many matches like WWE. They go match, and then the most they'll have is some matches will have a video package. Whereas WWE almost has a video package between every single one, or they'll cut to commercials or something. And it's still so much shorter because of the amount of matches they have on the card. And so the fact that that's 4 hours basically straight of wrestling is just blistering. It's really hard to keep up with it. So you and I, we finished the Mercedes and Vakura match, which is ridiculous that we watched 8 matches in the time that we had. And then it was holy crap, it's getting really late. Let's watch these separately. And it's so long that it took me the rest of the week to watch these other ones, just around my other stuff. And I find that every time I watch, God bless them, but New Japan as well. They have so many freaking matches on their cards. Whenever I watch AEW or New Japan shows, I'm like, y'all got to get down to this, 6 is your max, I think. It's a way better model. And I feel like you can watch it easier in one sitting. Matches stand out more. I don't know. That's my only knock.
I love wrestling and stuff. There is a difference between enjoying a pay-per-view and feeling held hostage by a pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's like a good meal. It's okay, you want to have enough that you're full, but you're not, at the end of it, you're going to be regretting that really tasty meal if it's I ate too much. And,
oh yeah,
and you're going to be feeling fatigued and not great. And that's kind of, I feel like with these like marathon shows, and I will give AEW some credit. I remember one of the Double or Nothings, we were counting the matches, and between like the pre-show matches and the main card, it was like almost like 20 matches, like 18 matches or something like that, which is absurd. That's way too much. So like they've kind of scaled it back, but like imagine had we watched the pre-show too, 15 matches.
Dude, no, like there's no way.
Or like the people in the audience, like how are they not asleep by the time Swerve gets up?
Right? Like that. Like one of the things that like I remember when WWE had like we would watch those pay-per-views together, and it would be like, okay, let's start at like 3 for the pre-show, because at the time they actually had a match or 2 on there, and then we'll watch this entire
done at 10
pay-per-view, 10, 11, something like that, and it's just like absolutely insane, and I'd be tired, and I'd like honestly at certain points it has nothing to do with the wrestlers, but I would fall asleep because I'm sitting there for, what is that, like 7 hours?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like it used to be WrestleManias before they split it to 2 days, which was the smartest thing they could have done, by the way.
Oh, 100%.
Like 8-hour days.
Yeah, it was insane. And so like when they started shortening things and did 2-day things, and like you still had this amazing quality, and even more so because you got to spend more times on these specific matches because you had the time with the 2-day thing. Like it's also easier to digest. It is like, and it so much better. I prefer it. And like you can't do that with every pay-per-view, I'm aware, but like just make it so it's a lot.
Yeah, honestly, I think part of it is it would be easier for them to cut down if they did more pay-per-views. I think part of it is because they don't do as many, and obviously they've increased them over the years. There's more than there used to be, but and I don't know, maybe they feel like that if they can't get away with doing more pay-per-views and still get people to shell out the money for it, since theirs is a pay-per-view model and WWE's is a premium live event model where you're just, if you have Peacock, you're seeing it. So I don't know.
That's fair.
I don't know if that's, but they could still cut down on these matches, especially with like how much we've complained about it. Where they've put too many big matches, I think, on TV, but then they'll do that and they still have these super long pay-per-views. So it's interesting. I feel like they could shuffle things a bit, but
they need to figure their stuff out. I mean, it's still a young company, but they need to they gotta figure it out.
Yeah, and it ebbs and flows. Like I feel like they're kind of getting a little bit out of the hole of like it being really bad, but they still have problems. Like they're not drawing at the weekly shows and whatnot. But I think everything, as long as they can not blow too much money and they keep putting on good pay-per-views, they'll probably be okay. When the day comes when they start doing shitty pay-per-views, I think or if they get in real bad financial trouble, it might die. But I don't think, they have a ridiculous roster. So I don't see them, short of bad booking, I don't see them having stinker pay-per-views, because I think that these wrestlers are so good that they will good matches even if it's poorly booked. So but I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic because I want them to exist and do good, because it's good. Good for wrestling. It's good for the wrestlers. It's good for fans too.
We've had this conversation before.
Yeah, it's good for fans.
Completely agree.
Because there's been times where, like when AEW was first popping off, WWE was kind of, they had some really great stuff, but their weekly booking was not great, and so AEW, was like this
lit a fire under their
shining beacon, and I think it made them better for sure. So
totally.
Well, thanks so much for hopping on here and talking with me about Forbidden Door. This was really fun.
Of course.
And
thanks for having me.
We'll have to have you on the next one. All right, thanks, nerds. That's the episode. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate my guest, Cynthia Borges, coming on and talking about Forbidden Door, talking some AEW, talking some New Japan Pro Wrestling.
If you're digging what I'm doing here at Nerds with Opinions, make sure you're following me on social media at nerds_opinions on both X and Instagram. And you can find me at Nerds with Opinions on Facebook. If you're listening to this on Spotify, if you could rate this, it's out of 5 stars. 5 stars would be really, really great. That would be awesome. If you are a Apple Podcast person, you can rate and review this podcast. And a positive, favorable review and a good rating would really, really be appreciated and a really big help. That is all I've got for you today. Thanks so much for listening to the episode. As always, I am your host, Matt Holben, and you have been listening to Nerds with Opinions.